We just allow this and that company in our country to manufacture medicine. TRIPS does sort of allow this. And WIPO officials sometimes don't tell the people they're educating there about this. But then WIPO only sets the framework of the framework for the laws that the member countries then are going to implement. So what is decided at WIPO is not written in stone there. Each country has its own ways of interpreting this. Well, after talking about what WIPO does do, now for what WIPO could do, in our opinion, and what WIPO would be an excellent tool for once we've reconfigured it a bit. WIPO is sort of the master key to this international system of intellectual monopoly rights, the root axis, if you will. If we could get WIPO to implement corresponding treaties, like the Access to Knowledge Treaty, we could get it to put public interest before individual profit. We would not have to fight this out in every single of the 180-something countries that populate this world. No, it would just, one organization would do. We could stop the TRIPS Plus treaties. Some are really more curious, like for example, the proposed broadcast treaty, which is being negotiated right now, which would give a sort of something copyright nobody really understands to organizations for the mere act of broadcasting something. So if I'm a radio station and I have an author coming to me saying, look, I got this great feature and I have the copyright in it, would you please broadcast? We negotiate a treaty. I, as the radio station, broadcast this. Fine, that's how it works today. And then under the broadcast treaty, the author would retain his copyright, but I would also get a sort of broadcast copyright in whatever I broadcast there, and this would immediately create a thicket of laws, or a thicket of rights that no one would be able to manage. The only people to profit from this would be lawyers specializing in intellectual monopoly rights. Even broadcasting organizations have said they don't want this. We could use WIPO to shorten copyright duration the world over. So while TRIPS says you have to have a minimum of 50 years of copyright protection, an Access to Knowledge Treaty says, there's a proposed draft, says you can only have a maximum 50 years of copyright protection. If you choose to go below it, fine. This is the sort of limit we could implement there. We could put limits on patentability. We could end the software patent debate once and for all. Also, there's no need to patent medicines, really. India, for a long time, has only protected them by copyright, and went quite well. Patents on life are another debatable matter. And we could stop the criminalization of copyright infringement. Today, if you infringe someone's copyright, you don't go to jail necessarily. Rather, they can come to you and say, well, you've infringed my copyright, I've lost money because of that, would you please repay that money? And you say, okay, here's your money. That's how it works, and sometimes there's a court in between, but not necessarily. The EU is handling one or two proposals where the mere act of unauthorized copying, which some people choose to call piracy, becomes a crime. So it's something you go to jail for. And only recently some managers of big companies have spoken up and said, well, but this is stupid. We have our engineers. If they, for example, don't know the whole market and they develop a new idea, which someone else has had before, it happens, and we sell this, and we're unaware of the copyright, all of a sudden we're committing a crime. Our managers go to jail. This could create a problem. We don't want to go to jail. So there's even big rights-holding companies in countering that. Well, a first step now into WIPO, a first step towards access to knowledge, towards changing WIPO into an organization promoting access to knowledge instead of promoting ever more restrictive handling of intellectual monopoly rights, is the so-called development agenda. This is a proposal brought on by a group of countries, calling themselves the Friends of Development, led by Brazil and Argentina. I've listed some of the others here. Actually, by now, some 100 developing countries have signed on to this. And they say, we want to reform WIPO. We want WIPO to put more emphasis on the public interest, instead of only looking towards ensuring the greatest possible profit opportunities for rights holders. And this could be done in a number of ways, which, the documents are online if you choose to read through all 100 pages. But, for example, promoting technology transfer. Having more open conditions for developing countries to make use of patents of the developed world. Or safeguarding public interest flexibilities, the way the Access to Knowledge Treaty would do. Actually writing down all those exceptions everyone is using every day, like the use of copyrighted material in education. That's very important. And then, finally, the development agenda says, well, WIPO should have its work reviewed, which is something that most organizations do. Companies pay a lot of money to consultants to review their processes because they know it's good for them. WIPO says, nah, we don't need this. No, we're doing it right, don't. It would cost money to review, you know? What's happened with the development agenda? Until now, it's mainly been talks about procedural matters, which some people suspect is a blocking strategy by the Western countries, especially the United States, which are totally opposed to the development agenda. So finally, they've agreed to have 2 more meetings in the coming year, in February and June, I believe, and then produce recommendations on what to do with the development agenda for WIPO's General Assembly. So this is a very slow process. There are no fireworks usually in the United Nations processes. It's all big mountains of paper and lots of boredom. But what is important, in our view, is that the debate about access to knowledge has reached the United Nations level. It's there. It's being debated in diplomatic assemblies. And it will not go away anymore, that simply. That is why the Access to Knowledge Treaty is important. Let's see what we have here. Oh yeah, that's why the Access to Knowledge Treaty is important, because it provides the draft that has been drawn up in May last year, provides a sort of rallying point for a lot of NGOs who came together to negotiate this draft and say, okay, this is what we need. We are the organization of blind people, we need this and that in the treaty. We are the organization of the hearing impaired, we need this and that. With the Free Software Foundation, we want, for example, a prohibition of software patents. So that's what this Access to Knowledge Treaty is good for. And we hope to take it much further. What does the Free Software Foundation Europe do at WIPO? We believe that free software is essential for access to knowledge. Maike, before this, has talked about free software and the digital divide. We believe that software, being codified knowledge, really should be accessible to all. And with the GPL and some other licenses, we have the tools to do it. Then we inform country and industry delegates about free software alternative models, because many of them have not actually heard that there is such a thing as free software. And we usually put on suits and ties and go all, and talk to them very nicely, hand them fancy cards and all that, because we want to, we want to show them that we're in favor of business if you just do it right. Then, improve the legal conditions for free software, like prohibiting patents, getting free software into WIPO's development work, getting WIPO to, in the way of technology transfer, teach developing countries about free software. That would be a great thing if they could just take on that task. And of course, we connect with other NGOs. That's how a good part of the Access to Knowledge Treaty came about, because all the NGOs met at WIPO and said, oh, look, there's something going wrong here. And finally, we want to turn WIPO from the World Intellectual Property Organization into the World Intellectual Wealth Organization, because we believe that really there is a good place for such an organization promoting intellectual wealth the world over. Just to summarize this part, WIPO is the root access to international treaties on intellectual monopoly rights and access to knowledge. The development agenda is a first step towards the idea of access to knowledge, the concept of access to knowledge being recognized on far greater level than before. And the Free Software Foundation Europe, together with many other organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, like Doctors Without Borders, is working to turn WIPO into a World Intellectual Wealth Organization. So what can you do? You don't have to sit by the sidelines. You can stay informed, at least. You can read about this. You can discuss this. The topic is becoming ever more important, and there's more and more being written about it. And if you start writing about it too, run a blog, do something, that'll be a contribution. You can lobby politicians and businesses. You can go to them and say, hey, look, this is what's important to me, or I have a software consultancy, and this is why, for example, we need laws that that leave space for free software, or this is why in public tender, free software needs a place. You can criticize the concept of intellectual property, because it's really a propaganda term, because it's not property, because it's a monopoly right, and there's no need to handle it as restrictively as is being done right now. You can pick your favorite public interest NGO and support it. We wouldn't mind, frankly. We have a support club, the Fellowship of the Free Software Foundation Europe, reachable under fsfe.org. And with there's a yearly fee of, if you choose to pay full fee, 120 euros, minimum 60. And with these fees, it's been up for about a year now. With these fees, we've, for example, managed to hire someone working full-time for us in Brussels, which we just couldn't afford before. And this person has been very instrumental in the fight against software patents. You can promote alternative models, create and use free software, and create and use free content. Show your friends what's cool about free software. And you finally can explain the problem to two of your friends. Even if one forgets, the other one will carry it on. That was that. Questions, please.
To take a devil's advocate position, the current
Excuse me, the what position?
A devil's advocate position is a position I don't really believe in myself, but the current rights holders will claim that by protecting profit, they are doing the best for society as a whole. Does the FSFE have an answer to that attack when it will surely come up?
In fact, we do, because it does quite frequently come up. At WIPO, where we are registered as permanent observers, a lot of pharma companies run this argument. They say, well, if we have stricter monopoly protection in places like India, and places like South Africa, we can make a lot more money. This is what they actually say. And then, again, nothing wrong with making money, and then take this money and give it away by, for example, selling the medicine cheaper, which is quite intriguing to me, because why would you have to run the money through the company first? We could greatly simplify this process. Again, I'm fully convinced that research is expensive, and creativity needs incentives and deserves incentives. But we have to keep in mind that the public interest has to be the priority, that patents and copyrights are just tools, not ends in themselves.